with pro-democracy forces now wide awake and surging in terms of their numbers and courage, dug in on one side, and Donald Trump with his band of autocratic enablers on the other. The country in some ways feels like it's engaged in a game of chicken, waiting to see which side's going to blink first. A stare down, if you will, where the stakes are nothing less than the future of American democracy. Today, though, following the fatal shootings of two people in Minneapolis at the hands of federal immigration officers, and subsequently the breathtaking durability and scope of protests from ordinary citizens braving the bitter cold to protect their neighbors, hitting the pavement in protest all across our country day after day, it is the Trump side doing the blinking. Now, why could that be? Well, because the gears of democracy, cobwebs and all, are finally creaking back into action on three separate but important fronts today. First, in state houses from coast to coast, New York Times reports this, quote, ever since the second Trump administration embarked on its large-scale deportation efforts, Democratic-leaning states have proposed and passed, in some instances, countermeasures, such as banning masked or unidentified law enforcement officers. Last month, a dozen legislators from 7 states announced that they would coordinate legislation in 2026 to complement the litigation already being used by Democratic attorneys general to challenge immigration policies. But after the killings of both Mr. Preddy and Renee Good, a resident protesting ICE's presence in the Twin Cities, those endeavors have gained more urgency. That's according to lawmakers and immigration rights groups. The jet fuel possibly animating that urgency happens to be the second of those three fronts we talked about. That is us, the American people at large, in growing numbers, because voters right now are making it abundantly clear that they are not interested in waiting the 9 months between now and the midterms. They're using their feet, they're using their body. They're putting Donald Trump and the Republicans on notice that they do not approve of what they're doing, especially the extreme immigration measures being carried out against human beings, including American citizens, in the name of the American people. Tomorrow at this time, it's possible, it is likely that we could be covering widespread protests, and possibly there's some talk that we could also be covering some general strikes in some parts of the country. There's a third front, our justice system. Just in the last 24 hours, judges in separate cases have acted decisively to try to rein in the seeming impunity of Donald Trump's immigration policies and authorities. In one instance, a federal judge in Minnesota ordered the government to cease detaining and deporting refugees who were lawfully admitted to our country and immediately release those currently held for reexamination of their cases. In another, a federal judge picked ICE apart. That judge said that ICE has violated nearly 100 court orders as part of what they're branding as an aggressive crackdown. From that ruling, quote, this list of violated court orders should give pause to anyone, no matter his or her political beliefs, about who cares about the rule of law. ICE has likely violated more court orders in January 2026 than some federal agencies have violated in their entire existence. ICE is not a law unto itself. ICE has every right to challenge the orders of this court, but like any litigant, ICE must follow those orders unless and until they are overturned or vacated. These three buckets, these three avenues of pressure are clearly registering with Donald Trump and the White House. As part of that game of chicken we talked about, Donald Trump is going about some subtle changes to his immigration language and his enforcement policies as the pro-democracy forces in America muster their might ahead of tomorrow and whatever comes next. That is where we start today with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. Publisher of The Bulwark, host of the Focus Group podcast, Sarah Longwell, is here. My friend and colleague, senior political analyst, contributing host of Pod Save America, host of the podcast Runaway Country, Alex Wagner is back with us. And former top DOJ official, legal analyst Andrew Weissman's here as well. Sarah Longwell, let me start with you. What do you see happening in the country in terms of the public mood?
Well, I listen to voters week in and week out in focus groups, and I cannot overstate how big of a shift there has been on just Minneapolis. And one of the things I want to start out with is just the fact that everybody knows what is happening. You know, I talk a lot about what it takes to break through in this noisy information environment. You know, voters often, we will be talking about something on the show or in Washington, and voters won't have heard about it. Not only has everybody heard about these shootings, but everybody's seen the videos. They've examined them for themselves. And people were already deeply uneasy after the shooting of Renee Good. But to have a second shooting with Alex Preddy, where I got to say, for voters, the Preddy shooting is just much more clear cut. They looked at the Renee Good one, and, you know, people were able to tell themselves, well, she was in the car, and how was the car turning? The masked agents, 6 of them jumping on Alex Preddy, shooting him in the back, him clearly having his hands up, just trying to defend a woman that an ICE agent had shoved into the snow, has created a really different environment where people are now saying they are fed up with these sort of over zealousness of these ICE agents, the fact that they're paroling the streets in masks, the backlash. And look, obviously, hardcore Trump voters, many of them will stick with him on this, but the vast majority of the country is just reaching kind of a tipping point on not only do they think this is wrong, what is happening, right? They hired Trump to secure the border. They hired Trump to deport dangerous criminals from the country, but they did not want this, people in our streets. The other thing is, Donald Trump is not doing the thing that voters hired him to do the most, right? If the economy was booming and people's prices were going down, sometimes voters can forgive Trump for a lot of the things he does in that context. But at a time when Trump is not addressing their concerns and he's creating chaos in the streets and they're shooting Americans, that's when you start to see public opinion really start to move.
Sarah Longwell, the child separation practice has been, thanks to people like Jacob Soboroff and other great journalism and activists, has been part of the Trump story. But to your point, people are now focusing in on the plight of young children like Liam Ramos, who was used, not just detained in Minneapolis, but used as bait to lure out other family members at a time when, to your point, everyone has seen the images of how Alex Preddy was killed. I wonder if the whole project of going after the worst of the worst has now been blown apart as a lie.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a few lies, actually, that American voters understand. And again, I just can't overstate how interesting it is to me to hear Trump voters, and many of the people we've been talking to have been Trump voters, talking about Ramos, talking about, I mean, they know these stories, and many of them are calling for Kristi Noem to be impeached or gotten rid of, which I was actually pretty surprised to hear Trump voters saying. Now, these are swingier voters, people who went from Biden to Trump, but they say this idea of using kids as bait, of going into schools, of going into churches, these are the kinds of things that Americans reject. They say, yes, get dangerous criminals, but somebody who's been here for 20 years, like, don't come into our streets and start dragging our neighbors out. Like, they want a policy solution to it, but they do want people to be treated humanely. Like, the American people have not lost every sense of what is decent and what is right. And they think that using kids as bait is wrong. Separating kids from their families is wrong. That was true in the Trump first administration, and it's true now.
Sarah, I think we have some footage from your focus groups. Let me play that for our viewers.
Whenever there's a highly publicized police shooting, and it's getting publicized because there's questions over whether it was a good shoot, I think in law enforcement, there's usually well, you have to put yourself in that moment. You have to understand they were making a quick decision. You have to understand, like, the law enforcement is usually quick to, I don't want to say defend, but kind of explain or justify why it was a good shoot or a bad shoot. And over the last few weeks, months, year, it's getting harder and harder for people around me to have, like, a good faith conversation about why something was a good shoot. I don't know anybody who saw the video. The most recent one in Minneapolis.
ICE has single-handedly set police back easily 100 to 50 to 100 years. Easily. I'm glad that I medicaled out, because I would kind of hate to be a cop right now because you're dealing with, because what one badge does, everybody gets blamed for it.
Now, Sarah, explain who these voters are.
Yeah, so we just did this group last night, and these are law enforcement officers. Some of them are correctional officers, many of them are beat cops, some of them are federal law enforcement, but they're all people who have operated in law enforcement communities, and they did all vote for Kamala Harris. We are doing two groups. We're going to do another one tonight of people who, let's say, are more Trump friendly, and we'll see how different those are. But in this particular group, it wasn't just that they were all talking about how this made law enforcement look bad, how it broke trust with the people that they're supposed to be protecting. You could also just feel like they were sad. They were devastated by what was happening. Like they're cops who feel like their duty is to protect people. And I think watching, especially for law enforcement, and I think you're going to hear more of this, watching people who are not trained, who treat people horribly, who shoot, quickly and thoughtlessly and taking American lives and creating chaos in the streets. They view that as something that is going to, because ICE are not the same, right, as the police officers that we deal with every day, or Border Patrol is not the same, but they feel like what it is going to do is break the trust between the American people and law enforcement writ large, and that's something that you can't just get back in a day.